Team. So welcome everybody. Look, we've got teams right across Australia, New Zealand, up through Southeast Asia, into Beijing, across to Japan, into Korea, right out to Africa. We've got the Nigerian team with us on this competition. So it's like a really exciting mix of really international teams. So welcome to those of you who are on board with us for this first session. And thank you, Bianca, for bringing your expertise. So Bianca is the chairperson of the Australian Mediator Standards Board. So Australia has a very, very what do you call it, strong and deep history in terms of the uptake of mediation. And these days we use mediation really across the whole of civil society in Australia. So the Australian Dispute Centre, of which I'm the CEO and my name's coming up there, I'm Deborah Lockhart, is a not-for-profit that's collaborating with the International Chamber of Commerce to present this competition. And we're really excited about this competition because it is a fantastic way for you to hone your skills and your negotiation skills in the context of a cross-border commercial matter, so that when you're instructing your clients, you can talk to them about the mediation process. And when you are advocating within the context of a mediation, you're going to have some really honed skills in how to approach it. So, and this is our role as the Australian Dispute Centre, is to promote best practice mediation. So you're the new lawyers, you're the new business people, you're the new mediators, and so it's really exciting for us to be able to help you with your learning in this competition, and also help you with your networking. It's a great way to meet some new people as students, but also you're going to have a wonderful opportunity to meet some amazing ADR practitioners who are going to be your mediators and judges. And you'll have a chance not only to meet them in your mediation session, but also socially outside. And for the opening of the APCMC itself, where Helen has been working on an amazing program for the opening, which involves a lot of the diplomatic community here in Australia who are diplomats from your countries and other countries. So that's really exciting as well. And you will have an opportunity to meet them online as well on that opening ceremony. So keep that 12:30 to 1:30 slot on September the 10th clear. You're going to have a busy day, but don't miss that. So I'd like to throw it over to Bianca, and what I was going to say is Bianca is not only an expert in mediation, but she's also an expert in health and fitness, and which we can, and that's why I'm staying, because I'm absolutely sure I'm going to learn a lot about staying health and fit over, well, a lot of us are in lockdown, is really important, and we wanted to put that focus on looking after ourselves. So thanks, Bianca, really appreciate you being here.
I'll just change the word expert in the health and fitness area to a lover and a learner of, because I think we can all want to take better care of ourselves, and we can all learn from one another about some of the strategies around that. So it might seem like a little bit of an odd topic to start with, but perhaps it's a really well placed and important one, because not only are you about to face this really exciting competition, but of course, there's going to be some nerves. There's a lot of preparation that goes into this. There's the controllables and the uncontrollables. And there's just a lot of hard work because I guess you're balancing this with all of your other work, your studies. So I can appreciate that you carry a lot on your shoulders at times, and it can be really important to stop and think about how you keep going and look after yourself. I think also in these strange times that we're living in, and I do hope that you are all doing okay and your families are doing okay, we underestimate how much we might absorb from the news, from the anxieties of others. And I think it just takes its toll. And I would say for me, 85–90% of the time, I feel okay with it all. I think I'm okay, I'm doing okay. And then I can just have a bit of a wave where I think, why do I suddenly feel sad or overwhelmed or just really unsure of my next step? And that's really normal. But again, I think those type of signs that our bodies gives us, or our minds kind of put forward, are gifts. It's our body's way of saying, I need you to do something. I need you to slow down or speed up or take some time out or drink this or sleep off that, whatever it might be. So I do think it's really important to kind of stop and notice those gifts that our bodies give us. Why I'm particularly interested in this topic, probably much like yourselves, I was a student who really had difficulties saying no to any opportunity because I loved doing it all. Is anyone else like that? Couple? And I tended to want to do everything perfectly, which of course is impossible, but a lovely kind of dream to have. But I probably pushed myself a bit too hard at times. I found quite early when I was studying and working a couple of jobs and saving to travel and all sorts of things, that the thing that kind of gave me my sanity was my daily walk with a girlfriend, where I couldn't study. I just gossiped and had a great time, and I got some fresh air. And I think it really got me through. So early on, I figured there was something small I could do. And I think that's the key. It needs to be small and sustainable and enjoyable. It needs to be something that I can do on my worst day as well as my best day to kind of help me out. So I'd like to suggest to you that whatever it is that is your handful of things that help you be your best may be very, very different to the handful of things that another person on this screen holds on to. And so really give some thought tonight to, or this afternoon for some of us, to what those things are for you. So for me, I had a few hiccups come up along the way. I started to struggle with chronic injuries because I wasn't paying attention to the niggles in my body. I hit a period where I got glandular fever and was knocked off my feet and just couldn't be a perfectionist in anything. Kind of had to reassess how to look after myself. And a couple of just health things where I realized I had to manage stress differently. So I became really, really fascinated with how I could do that in a way that was meaningful for me. And I just want to flag, and I just want to ask this question actually, whether it's the phrase wellness or well-being, perhaps we'll use the chat. What does that mean to you? Could be a word or a few words, but what does well-being or wellness mean to you? I see the typing happening. Balance and perspective. Oh my goodness, I love that, especially the perspective, taking care of yourself. Balance is an interesting one too, because there's a lot of rhetoric around about work-life balance, this balance, that balance, that sometimes you can start to have all these shoulds in your mind. I should do that yoga class. I should do this. And you start to get even more stressed. Whereas the way I think about balance is, what do I need in this moment? And that's going to be different the next moment or the next day. And thinking about balance in that moment. But there's some really good ones there. Thank you. I get a little bit concerned, and perhaps others do too, that wellness and well-being has been a little bit overused and perhaps misused in the social media world. And so we see a lot of influencers who perhaps don't know a lot beyond their own experience, but declare their own experience to be science. I would call what they're declaring to be me-search rather than research. And I think all of us can do a little bit of me-search to figure out what it is that works for us, but don't necessarily get caught up in the noise of others, because that can obviously not work well for all of us. And the last thing I just really wanted to flag is that tonight, I really want you to think about the concept of resilience. And again, that's a word that's bandied around a lot. But the way I think about resilience is your bounce back factor. Can you bounce back and do it again tomorrow? Typically, when we are, much like all of us on screen, we're achievers. We love to take on challenges. We like to really push ourselves. We consider ourselves to be very resilient, and we are. But the thing about resilience is it's a line, and we don't know when we've crossed it or where it is until we've crossed it. So that bounce back factor has to take into account what we can do well before that as a bit of a preventative. So I just wanted to pose that to you. Now, I've got a couple of slides, but I think rather than throw too many up for you, I'll pop a couple up here or there, but I'll just let you know that I popped together a really simple little workbook with some references for you, and it's got some slides in the back. So anything we're talking about here, you're likely to find in that workbook that will be circulated afterwards, and I hope it's a useful resource to you. But I really just wanted to start with the fact that we tend to wear busyness, as in busy, B-U-S-Y-ness, as a bit of a badge of honour. I don't know about others, but quite often and embarrassingly, I find myself responding to the question, how are you, with the word busy. And I'm starting to kind of stop myself and answer differently, because I'm really aware that we kind of wear that as a badge of honour and we see it with pride, whereas actually the busier we become and the less time we give ourselves isn't necessarily the best thing for us. And so a bit of food for thought. I don't know if anyone has followed Taryn Brumfitt, an Australian from South Australia, if we've got anyone from South Australia, who's done a beautiful documentary, if you can get your hands on it, called Embrace. And she's all about body positivity and all about really appreciating your body for what you can do. And she says you only get one body, and that body is the vehicle to pursuing your dreams. And I love the idea that if we're thinking about a vehicle, a car comes to mind, we think about any vehicle needs us to drive it, rest it and use it according to instructions. We need to put the right fuel in. We need to kind of ride it on the right terrain, all of those things. And so that's really what well-being is about, thinking about how we honour what we've got and use it according to instructions. So I'm really suggesting tonight's a chance to kind of slow down and reflect on that. And as I've said, do a little bit of me search. But I wanted to start with two simple rules, I suppose. Step one, when it comes to this stuff, has to be about tuning in and listening to the signs that our bodies give us. That's just simple. That's all we need to do. And step two is doing something with that. So I just want to ask you, first of all, thinking about a time where you've been feeling stressed or anxious, or if that's a bit too close for home and you'd like to think about a friend or a family member, them in a stressful or anxious situation, what signals does your body give you, or have you seen in others, that let you know that you're stressed or anxious? What do you notice about your body? You're very welcome to verbalize it. You're very welcome to pop it in chat. Anything that you notice about you? Yeah, headache. I'm so with you there. I get headaches and migraines. That's a really big sign, isn't it? Fast thinking. I'm so glad you said that. I also find that it's almost like the thoughts race across your brain and you can't kind of catch one before the next one goes across. Yeah. And going to sleep, it's like that's this cruel time at night where your brain decides to throw everything into the mix at the same time and kind of click the blender on and blur it all together. Heart rate increase, absolutely. That kind of panic and stress eating, I'm with you. My home office is next to the kitchen. I don't advise that when you're feeling a bit stressed. And for some people, it's actually the opposite. Not for me, but for some, they will say they just can't even think about eating. So that change in appetite happens to them. Yep, losing sleep, tendency to isolate. I can be a bit like that too. That fatigue, it's like really deep in your bones. You are tired, yet you're not sleeping well. Absolutely. Yep, the headaches and the stress eating. Look, we're in good company here, aren't we? No one's alone in these things. That sensory overload. That's a really interesting one. And I also struggle with that. Sometimes people's voices, for example, that wouldn't bother me when I'm not stressed, are suddenly like someone's scraping their fingers down a chalkboard, and really, really sensitive to noise. And I'll talk a bit about why that is. Emotional withdrawal, Absolutely, because we almost throw these boundaries up because we don't know what else to do. And the sleep patterns absolutely changing. They're really great ones. In fact, you've probably given me a better list than most people with 20 years experience could give me. So you're already really tuned into that. And there's some really useful kind of learnings in that. And what I'd like to say, there's a saying I love, the body whispers before it screams. So I think all of these things are little whispers that our bodies are giving us. The danger, of course, is if we ignore them, they can become chronic. We can start to notice that that pattern of not sleeping has become almost like our new routine and it's hard to break. Or we might find that we just low level fighting something all the time, like our immune system is really compromised. Maybe those headaches become migraines or chronic. I did have a period when I was living overseas where I started to get 8-day-long migraines and I just couldn't see. And I think if I went back in time, there's things I would have done far earlier. Even the glasses I'm wearing right now, for example, are blue blockers. I don't know if anyone's come across them because for me, the screen light can be a real trigger and the blue blocking glasses tend to help me with that, if that helps anybody. But we've got this whole idea of these are the signals our body's given us and we want to do something with them before they become chronic. So I wanted to introduce you to a little bit about the nervous system. Some of you might be really familiar with this. For some, it might be new. A useful book is by an Australian chiropractor, and I'm popping in the resources at the end of the slides that you'll get. His name's Dr. Wayne Todd, and he wrote a book called The SD Protocol. And what SD stands for is sympathetic dominance. And what he means by that is the sympathetic nervous system being the dominant one going on. So we've got a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. What you've probably heard about the sympathetic nervous system is the fight, flight, freeze type responses. So the things that we do when we feel that we're under threat or in danger. And it's really, really useful response. So ancestors faced tigers that were chasing them. Not so common on the streets these days for us, but that's what they faced. And what would happen in their bodies was a surge of adrenaline to the right areas in their bodies so they could run fast, quick. So that's what happens. Adrenaline goes to the areas that it's needed so that we can fight off the threat, run, do whatever we need to do. The problem in the modern world is that all of our stresses, they might not be the tiger chasing us down the street, but they're quite constant. It's being late for the meeting, having the deadline, having to cut down your essay by 2,000 words and not sure where to start, family issues, friend fights, whatever it might be. They might be all small on their own, but they add up. And our body doesn't discriminate. It just sees them all as stress. And it starts surging all of this adrenaline around. And so we're in this constant state of, I need to be ready to fight or flee or people please or whatever it might be, just to survive. So that's the sympathetic nervous system. The other part of our nervous system is the parasympathetic, and it's the rest and digest. So it's when our body knows that the threat is no longer there, the tiger's gone, and now it can rest, it can repair it on a cellular level, it can digest the food that we've eaten so we can thrive on the next day when the next threat might come along. But what happens in the modern world is if we keep having these cumulative small stresses, our body stays in that sympathetic dominant space. And we actually do notice things like that sensory overload and all of those things you've identified, because our body's kind of in this state where there's all this adrenaline running through us, and we're ready for anything. It's not good in a chronic way. And what happens is when the sympathetic nervous system is in the driver's seat, it's not like the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, just gets to sit in the passenger seat. It gets turfed out of the car. Because when the body's in this state of, I need to be ready to run, it suppresses everything else. So your digestion isn't working so well. That's why you might notice some tummy troubles or your changes in appetite. And that's why you might notice that brain racing and like your muscles can't just relax and they start to get tense because your body hasn't actually gone into that rest and digest place. So sometimes even in our sleep, we're just not getting there because our bodies think we're in this kind of permanent state of needing to be ready to run. So that's what this book is about. And into that mix is circadian rhythm, being that our body is meant to be awake when the sun is up and it's meant to be asleep when the sun is down. And all of our hormonal responses that occur when we get to rest all start to balance themselves out because of that awake when it's sunny and restful when it's dark. So we start to have other things happen. We start to have our serotonin thrown off. Serotonin and melatonin are kind of our wake and sleep type hormones. And serotonin is called the happy hormone. It's also the hormone that's responsible for a lot of our immunity. And 80 to 90% of it lives in our digestive system. So if we're not resting and digesting, all of that's affected. And you may or may not have heard that also, as your circadian rhythm or your sleep is impacted, you've got two hormones called ghrelin and leptin, which are impacted. And I always think of that as gremlin for ghrelin. That's how I remember it. Because ghrelin and leptin, one is responsible for your hunger signals. And so when these elevate or drop, what it means is you are constantly hungry. And the other one is responsible for telling you when you're full. And when you haven't slept, it doesn't have the same sensitivity. So you can be constantly hungry and never feel full. So that might be what some of you are talking about when you say you could just keep, I could eat cardboard. I think some days that I'm really stressed, it's just this kind of constant need. So all of this is happening when we're in that permanent state of sympathetic dominance in our nervous system. But the good thing is we can actually not trick our body, but assure our body that it's okay to go into the parasympathetic, to take a rest, to repair, to digest, to be ready for another day. It's simple things like recognizing when we're in that state and using our breath. So I don't mean that to sound all yoga teacher on you, to say that everything will be fine if you just take a deep breath, but my word, a lot of things would be better if we just took a deep breath. So when we can slow our breath down, for example, and there's a number of examples I've given you in the workbook you'll get, simple exercises that you could do in 2 minutes or 5 minutes when you're first awake or asleep or on a bus, whatever it might be, says to your body, I am okay. I am not under threat. Everything is fine. And helps your body shift into that parasympathetic space. Another thing that I've read recently that I find so wonderful, I don't know if any of you have ever noticed, if you've seen a nature documentary or if you've seen two animals have a fight in front of you. After they've had the fight, you might notice that they shake themselves. You might see birds kind of shuffle their feathers. Makes me think of Taylor Swift's Shake It Off, because what they're actually doing is recalibrating their body. So the shaking actually readjusts their nervous system and tells them the threat's over. And so for human beings, they say there's some logic in anything that kind of shakes things up. So if you're a runner, you might enjoy going for a run and that kind of feeling. If you've got a kid at home, jump on the trampoline with them, that might help. If you want to dance in your lounge room when no one's looking, that might help. Or if you really literally just want to shake your body when no one's looking, that might help. So there's things you can do with slowing down your breath, deepening your breath, or even just shaking your body literally to say, you're okay. So there's a couple of things in that. There's also, I think, just a little bit of self-talk that needs to go on, isn't there? I'm quite guilty, as many human beings are, of speaking to myself in a way that I would never speak to somebody else, being much harder on myself than I would ever be on somebody else. So I think sometimes it's about stopping and going, wow, what did I just say in my own head about not getting that done, or that could have been better, or you silly such and such? Would I actually say that to someone I care about? And if I care about myself, should I be saying that to myself? How could I reframe that? So I think that's another tip I would give you around just actually letting yourself know it's okay. It's totally okay. Any others that people want to throw out there for the moment, or any questions you had so far? Have I given you a good, I've got the blue lens helping others too. Maybe you're just all thinking about the dance you're going to have in the lounge room when you get off the Zoom call. Or maybe you've got your video off and that's exactly what you're doing right now. We won't judge you, promise. So that's a bit about the nervous system and the hormonal responses that are happening, because the other thing that happens with circadian rhythm and being awake when the light's up and being asleep when the light's dark, is our bodies giving us amounts of cortisol. You might have heard of that hormone, to actually help us be more alert or get ready for sleep. And that gets thrown off too. And cortisol is what's known as the stress hormone. It kind of perpetuates that stressful feeling that you might have. So that's recognizing it. Now I just want to have a chat about doing something with what you observe beyond the dancing and the breathing. I wanted to pose this to you. The basics are the best. So as I said before, sustainable, enjoyable, something you could achieve on your worst day. Most of us can brush our teeth on our worst day. Put something we could add to that that actually looks after us and our mental well-being as well. So thinking like that. And when I talk about the basics, I'm getting to things like sleep, which has come up already. I'm getting to things like nutrition, what we put in, the fuel that we put into our tank, to the space that we create for ourselves. So mindfulness is a word that's bandied around, but I think that's about giving yourself space. And space will mean different things to different people. And I think it's about connection. And never, ever have we been so more aware of that than we are in this current world. We all seek to feel connected. And we need to think, I believe, about who we connect with, who actually gives us energy or fills our tank, and who depletes us, because we can make some choices there. And the other one that I'd throw into the mix is play. That's not just dancing in the living room, as I've said, but what play might mean to you. And I'll define play coming up soon, because it's different for all of us as well. So we're talking about what we might do. And I just wanted to pull up my PowerPoint briefly, because there's a slide in here and a great resource. We've gone through all of this. Look how good we are. Matthew Walker. I don't know if anyone's come across this book, Why We Sleep. It's really great. It's really easy to read, and it really helps you understand, or why we need to sleep, or the different cycles that we go through in sleep. And when we sleep, it's really about helping our parasympathetic nervous system take the driver's seat, so that our cells can repair, so that we can let go of that tension, so that we can digest our food and function well. So a couple of tips that he gives. Our bodies like routine. We are just creatures of habit. And I don't know about others, but I've become, and I cannot believe it, a data nerd. I love my wearable, my little kind of Fitbit type thing that many of us have, and I love what it tells me about my sleep. So I kind of wake up in the morning and go, woohoo, I got 86% last night, or I got 92% last night, or oh dear, got 70, got 65, what have I done wrong? So I quite like the data we can get these days to kind of help us understand the impact of a late meal, say the night before, and how that's affected our heart rate and how it's affected our sleep, or a number of other things that might come into play. The other thing that's really cool about the app world that we live in is, many of you might have tried this already, you can set up a sleep routine on your phone. So you can kind of say, okay, I'd like to get 8 hours sleep. They talk about, 6 to 8 or 7 to 8 being like a bit of a magic number. So I'd like to get 8 hours sleep, but I also like to get up early and go for my run to shake my body around. So if I want to do that, I need to create a bedtime of this time. And my phone's set up so that it shuts off all the alerts. It tells me that I should start thinking about bed, and it sets my alarm at the same time each day. So that's been hard for me to get into, but now that I'm into it, I'm really, really enjoying that routine, and my body enjoys it. If you can bear to exercise early in the day, and I know it's not for everybody, but it can be better than later in the day, simply because later in the day, it's kind of amping up your heart rate closer to bedtime. So just giving some thought to that not being too late. Being mindful of large meals or stimulants later in the day. So sometimes I say just giving yourself a window of 2 to 3 hours between dinner and bed. Doesn't mean you can't have a snack, because we all deserve a little bit of a treat here and there. But just being mindful of not having a large meal close to bed can have a really good impact. Napping later in the day. If anyone loves their naps, napping's fine, but later in the day can impact our sleep, of course. And I think creating that space and time to unwind and relax before bed can be really important. I gave a talk about a week and a half ago to about 100 other mediators. And the topic was how we're impacted by the effects of anxieties of COVID on participants in mediation and working from home, and how we cope with that. And someone rightly said, I'm working from home and you're studying from home, and home is my home. And how do I actually create this line between my study or my work day and my home? For me, my work from home, I'm not in the same spot right now, is my dining room table. I no longer eat my dinner at my dining room table because I just need that to be separate to my workspace. I also have found that I need to change the lighting. I'm a bit dark here tonight, sorry everyone, because it's not the most well lit room, but I like to have a couple of candles lit simply because that's not how I'm going to work. So it makes my day feel really different at the end of the day to how it's felt during the day. For some people, just walking around the block in place of the commute they might normally have to work, or I know, Deb, you like to walk to the office and home, can be a way of creating a difference between your spaces. And this is a story I love to bits. Many people say that the process of having a shower is incredibly therapeutic for washing off your day. It also has this impact of a hot shower then creates a body temperature drop, which helps you sleep. But I remember teaching a man some years ago who was perhaps the highest achiever I've ever met. He was this international superstar businessman who had about 10 million things, that seemed, going through his brain at one given time. And he told me that he'd built a shower in his office. I don't know exactly what that looked like. I imagine it was in a bathroom environment, but he would say to everybody, I'm going to have a shower at odd times of the day, like 2 p.m. And he'd go and have a shower, and he reckons it solved the problem for him, washed him of the worry, and he came out and he had the solution. So that has never happened for me, but many people say just that process of having a shower can actually really change your thinking, can really kind of just that feeling of kind of cleansing some of the worries and having a bit of clear thinking, it could work. The dark, cool, gadget-free bedroom is another one that's certainly suggested by Matthew Walker. And for those who are talking about all of those thoughts that are so fast and you can't catch them, maybe it's about a brain dump. Maybe it's about having that piece of paper by your bed, or the phone with the notes section, and just dumping the worry or the idea or the to-do, whatever it might be, may not even make sense to you the next day, but dumping it somewhere where that is external to your brain can be very helpful. I've talked about breathing techniques, and particularly for the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, it can be about belly breathing. So it can be about lying down and actually popping your hand lightly on your stomach and breathing completely from your stomach. So you're feeling all of the air go in, so the balloon rises, and then all of the air go out as the balloon deflates. And just continuing that in a slow way is a way that your body actually shifts and gets ready for sleep. We've talked about the blue light blockers, but I also wanted to ask you the question again of what works for you in terms of improving your sleep, because you may have some gems that help others as well. Anything you'd like to share as a gem that helps you sleep? I know last year when we did this, Deb, we had a couple of people come up with some beauties. Someone uses lavender spray on their pillows and swears by it. Reading a book, agree, that's a great one as well, especially if it's not a book about a mediation competition, because you need to delineate between what you're studying and stressing about and something that takes you into another world. I also love a bit of yoga too. And there's some great yoga poses that actually encourage rest. And there's some that encourage wake. So really opening your chest or opening your hips is really about waking yourself up. And those inversions, or heart below your chest or head, is really about helping sleep. So it can be things just like hanging, standing up, hanging down, and letting the blood circulate differently. Hot milk, I love that one. That's a good wholesome one. The brain dump and the blue light glasses. I've got a friend there, Dean. And listening to affirmations, what a lovely one. Just it's another way of saying to your body, I'm okay. You know, the world is a bit crazy sometimes, but I'm okay. I'm safe. It's not going to matter if I don't write that email right now, or if I don't read that extra paragraph. It's going to be there tomorrow. It's okay. There's some really great ones there. And then moving on from sleep, just talk a bit about movement. And I use the word movement instead of exercise, because exercise can feel like a chore when you use it use that word. Whereas movement is whatever your body likes. Maybe it is yoga, maybe it is a walk around the block. Sometimes I hear people say, I hate running, but I do it. I'm like, why do you do it if you hate it? That's not particularly fun. And your body might not thank it for you. But for others, it's, oh my goodness, this just makes me feel so amazing. I love it. So I think it's about finding what works for you. And I think it's about recognizing what your body needs in the moment. So sometimes when you're particularly stressed, some types of exercise can just create more stress for your body. Your body just sees it as another thing added to the mix. So I know that when I was in the throes of glandular fever, I didn't know I had glandular fever yet. I thought I was just lazy. So I kept trying to do harder exercise programs, which was so stupid because what my body was under was stress, and I was putting more stress on it. Whereas something like a restorative yoga practice or a walk around the block would have been so much better for me. So I think sometimes it's just about recognizing, what does my body need in this moment? What does it need today? The other thing I just say about movement is something, it doesn't have to be every day, just something that, you know, is sustainable and doable for you. And I don't know if, again, if you just want to use the chat and throw up some of your very favorite movements that just help you feel like you're rocking life, you've got it under control, and your body's thanking you for it. We'll borrow the yoga that we've got up there already because that's a goodie. Any others? I think that's a great one, Dean. Walk to get your coffee and back. Then you got your reward in there as well. I also am an animal lover, so I've developed the routes where I can find all the cats and dogs to pat. So you know, whatever gives you a little bit of joy is the way to do it. And again, you'll have different ones. Some of you might like to box out your frustrations, whatever it might be. Just bear with me while I turn my page, because as I said, I didn't want to kill you with PowerPoint. The other one, of course, is thinking about what we feed our bodies. And we all live in different places. We have different things available to us. We have different likes. Some bodies may love a particular food and other bodies it doesn't agree with. So I don't think there's any one rule for everybody. What always concerns me is we are so flooded by information on what we should or shouldn't eat. And I think that can almost paralyze us from knowing where to start. I think the wisest thing I could say to you, if I could say anything wise, is think about what you can add rather than what you take away, because restriction is a stress for the body in the first place. So what can you add in that makes you feel good? Something that we do know from those who've studied nutrition deeply is we really need some of those macronutrients for really specific reasons. For example, you're going to need your brains to be working at full capacity for this competition, and brains' preferred source of fuel is carbohydrates. Good news, pasta lovers, good news, bread lovers, good news, vegetable lovers, because vegetables are also a carb. So those carbs are really going to be your preferred source of fuel for your brain to work well. Hormone health and also brain health relies on healthy fats. So good news, avocado lovers, butter lovers, nuts, seeds, all of those things are really going to be helpful for that kind of development. And we've spoken about rest and digest, and thinking about what are the proteins that you enjoy and you can add to your day, because proteins are about cell repair and cell regeneration. So they actually help you kind of really rest and use that rest to advantage. And fiber is your friend. If you remember, I said that serotonin, that happy hormone, and that hormone that really helps with immunity, is predominantly located in your digestive tract. And so fiber, vegetables, fruits, things that really create a happy tummy are really going to be great for both your immunity and for your mood. You might have heard the stomach referred to, or as the intestines, as the second brain. And so we want to have that happy second brain by what we feed it. And then I just wanted to move to the idea of mindfulness and ask you got a couple more there too, cycling. What does mindfulness mean to you? Because I think, again, this is a phrase that we sometimes overhear and we wonder what on earth it's about. What does it mean to you? Or what's something that you feel helps you be mindful? And it might be we can borrow a few from there again. The affirmations and the yoga in particular, Tharuka, are great ones. Deep in thought, or you might need some ideas, which I'm happy to give. journaling. Oh, that's a lovely one. And I've never, I did when I was young, do a lot of journaling, and I haven't revisited it, but maybe you've inspired me there and I might try that again. So there's some goodies there already. What I would say about mindfulness is it's really about finding a way to be in the moment right now. And meditation's another good example there, and breathing, that's great. So it's finding a way to be in the moment. And I think there's different ways we can do that. Sometimes it's just thinking, what is a ritual in my day that I could just pay more attention to? And maybe it's not, maybe Dean, if you're at home and not walking to the cafe and you're making yourself a coffee at home that particular day, maybe that's the ritual, making your coffee, making your tea. Maybe you do like to cook dinner. If that's you, maybe that's the ritual for you. For some people, it might be gardening. For some people, it might be walking or movement, something that's just part of your day anyway, and that you could stop and just observe a bit more carefully. I think that's probably the easiest way to think about it. And for some of us, that doesn't work. And so we want something different. So for some people, finding like a guided meditation on an app is a really great resource, because someone's talking to you, someone's creating the picture for you, telling you what to do, telling you what to visualize, and that kind of helps you out. But for others, it could be just a simple breath in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, release for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. So there's all sorts of different things that might be helpful to you. And I was listening to a particularly good podcast the other day, actually, about some tips for this. And it got me thinking about the things that force me to be mindful. For example, I've got 2 young nieces, and when they want me to just play with them, when they want me to colour in the colouring book or something that I would never do on my own, it's just something that kind of engrosses you and is really quite joyful. Sometimes it can be about animals, if you're an animal lover, and just spending time with your dog or your cat or your budgie or whatever it might be, and just finding just the space to do that and just be with that loved one. And the podcast I was listening to was with a man from Melbourne. So Melbourne has gone through the longest lockdown in Australia. And so he speaks a lot about resilience. His name is Hugh Van Cuylenberg, Cuylenberg. And he speaks about his time in India. And I know we've got some people on the screen from India. And he speaks about working as an English teacher in a remote part of India, and looking at this young child who really didn't have very much at all, and being in awe of this child, because despite not having anything, they were perhaps the most resilient human being that this man had ever met. And he uses the acronym GEM, G-E-M, for what this kid had that we could all learn from. And the G is for gratitude. And he describes gratitude not as saying, oh, I've got it better than such and such. It's not about comparison, but just saying, I'm going to focus on what I do have rather than what I don't have. So this is something that this kid was just doing in spades. And he'd do this little thing where he'd have a bowl of food that he would get when he went to school, but he wouldn't necessarily get elsewhere. And he couldn't say this, so he would say dis. And he'd just go dis or this every time he looked at something, or he's like, wow, look what I've got, which I thought was beautiful. The E is for empathy, or really it's about kindness. So thinking, what can you do for yourself that's particularly kind? What could you do for somebody else? And there's a lot of studies by those much smarter than me in the neuroscience space that attest that kindness lights up the brain in a certain way and releases oxytocin, which is what's referred to as the love hormone. Just makes you feel really full of love and gratitude and joy. So, picking up the mail for the neighbour who lives up the top of the stairs and taking it to them, buying the coffee for the person behind you in the line, saying hello to a stranger, just things that actually light up that part of the brain. This is something this kid was doing in spades as well. And the M was mindfulness. And we've spoken about a few of the ways that you might achieve that. So I quite liked that. And then connection. So I'll just bring up the PowerPoint again, because it might say it better than I'm about to. It is a fundamental human need, and it's the quality of our connections that feed our mental well-being. So what I'm inviting you to think about as you enter this, particularly stressful and studious part of your year is who energizes you. Get some more of that person in your life. Give them a call or answer the phone when they call. Who brings you down, or perhaps just creates a little bit of heaviness in your heart, because that's someone that you perhaps need a little bit less of in your day. And remembering that you do have some choices in that regard. So it's really about recharging your batteries. And I think about that in a social media context as well. We talk about social media feeds, and I think feeds is a really appropriate word, because we need to think what is actually feeding us and what is perhaps destroying us a little bit. And remembering that what we choose to follow is really choosing our future thoughts and emotions. So I think we have some choices we can make in terms of what really will lift us up and make our hearts sing. And then I've mentioned play, and I just wanted to talk a bit more to that. The resource for this is Dr. Brené Brown. I don't know if anyone else loves Brené Brown as I do. She's a social scientist. She's from Texas, and her PhD surrounds areas such as vulnerability, authenticity. She looks at empathy as being the solution to the shame that we play in our own heads. And she talks about brave leadership, embracing all of those things. And when she talks about leadership, she talks about the importance of letting go of productivity or busyness as a symbol of our self-worth. And she talks about finding more time for play. And she says that the opposite of play isn't work, it's depression, to highlight the importance of it. And I just love this definition. We need to think about play as time spent without purpose, something you just don't want to end, and you get lost in it. You lose your sense of time. And for each of you, that's going to be different. I noticed some people said reading a book before, that could be your version of play. Or maybe, as I said before, it's colouring in with my nieces. Think about what actually ticks those boxes for you and how you might create a bit more space in your life for that, just so your heart can sing a little bit and you can feel a bit more resilient. And then just my takeaways before perhaps I open up for questions is keep it simple and enjoyable. Life's too short to do things that aren't enjoyable. Make your health a non-negotiable, because you are important and you only get one body and mind. Talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. Be kind to yourself, and just get a grip on the basics. What's going to help you sleep better? What's going to help you get up and do a bit of movement and get some fresh air? What's going to fill you up with the right fuel when you make a meal for yourself? Who lights up your heart when you spend time with them? And what kind of play can you incorporate into your day? And I've got some resources there which you'll get in what I send you to that you might want to look at, including some podcasts that are a bit fun there too. So that's the main lot that I wanted to share with you. And thank you for listening, because it's a little bit different for me to share on this topic. I'm normally facilitating conversation as a mediator or teaching people to be mediators. But I firmly believe that there are two big gifts, one that we give another person, that is listening to them. It's something that we can really, really do to change somebody else's day or their world, and it doesn't cost us much. And the gift we give ourselves is self-awareness and doing something with what we notice. So I just wanted to thank you for that. Tharuka, very happy to share the resources page. What you'll get is a workbook with all the slides at the back, and I'll have the resource page there for you. The big ones were the SD protocol, really easy read, really interesting read on the sympathetic dominance nervous system. Brené Brown was another resource, and Matthew Walker on Why We Sleep. And then I've thrown in a couple of podcasts that you might find really interesting too in there. But any questions or comments or things you've particularly enjoyed hearing about or reflecting on tonight? I've overfilled your brains, which was not my intention.
I'm just going to give you one piece of feedback, Bianca, as I had a direct message that says you probably the biggest help. Your voice is so calming. You've helped us already.
Thank you. Maybe I've learned to trick myself. Everything's okay, Bianca. And remembering as well that I deal with people who are highly anxious in conflict situations. And I think that tone and pace and space are really important. And sometimes I have to remind myself to apply that to myself, because I'm still learning and I don't always get it right, but I try to keep learning.
I was also going to share one tip that I learned years ago, and you mentioned that I like walking, and I do walk to and from the office when I get in there. And as you're walking, is being mindful of each step that you're taking and your footprint, your foot on the pavement, and then at each tree that you arrive at, you smile. Now can get really weird if you've got other people coming towards you. It's less weird if you've got your mask on these days, but actually actively smiling and remembering to smile at each tree. And it's really, really interesting. And you, instead of walking home, mulling the day and thinking about, what I didn't get done or what I've got to do tomorrow, it's a great way of just calming the brain. Yeah. So I'll throw that one in. Yeah.
That's a lovely one. And look, it's less weird than if you stopped and hugged every tree, so, in terms of onlookers. But look, and a lot of people say sometimes just taking your shoes off and putting your feet in the grass or the dirt is a really grounding and calming thing. And thank you, Deborah Peter. We've got a lovely book recommendation there too, Murphy's Power of Subconscious Mind. Wonderful. Thank you. I'll have a look at that one myself too.
Thank you. We might, Helen, we might be able to add that to the reading list if we want to grab that. That's fantastic. So any final questions for Bianca while you've got her? She's Bianca, to be fair and frank, I think you do get up into the expert category on this. I know it's an area that you're really passionate about, and especially, in your role as a mediator, self-care is really, really important. And what you've been speaking about today is clearly pearls of wisdom that are not only useful to us all going into the APCMC, but also going into life and busy careers, and always remembering to look after yourselves.
It's true. And if I just think and just share with you, just before in Australia we went into lockdown when the pandemic began for us all, I had a fall when I was out in the bush running, and I tore 4 ligaments in my ankle. And so when we first went into this lockdown, I could barely walk. And then I could run eventually 15 meters, and then I kept building it up. And what I found was, for me, fresh air, running, and that cup of coffee at the end, Dean, were really important to create space before I went to the computer screen, to the conflict, to the stress for the day. And it was also kind of that sense of progression as well, finding something that you just want to get a little bit better at over time, and kind of celebrating those wins for yourself over time. And as I said, stopping to pat all the animals along the way is my other secret weapon to calm down. So for anyone out there.
Yeah, so you're petting animals, I'm smiling at trees.
And we just told you all to dance in your lounge room after.
I do that too. Yeah, definitely do the dancing in the lounge room. So any other last comments? Well, we've got you folks on board. We will oh, thanks, Dean. Yeah, as you would your best friend. That is, yeah, I think that's a great tip as well. Thanks, Dean. Yeah, for highlighting that.
And I just want to wish you all well. This is really exciting. I plan to be part of the team helping along the way as we go through. And I just hope you really enjoy the experience, that you have a lot of fun with it, a lot of fun with one another, a lot of fun with the arguments and the negotiations, and then you keep taking care of yourself as you go through it. And it's been a pleasure to be with you all tonight.
Yeah. Thanks, Bianca, and a big warm thanks from the organising committee of the Asia Pacific Commercial Mediation Competition. It's been fantastic to have you with us and sharing those insights. And we'll all be stepping out and getting, well, first of all, we're going to go home and get lots of sleep tonight, or at home, most of us are at home already. And tomorrow night, and I see that we have got Lisa online. I don't know if Lisa wants to pop up and say hi. But tomorrow night we've got Lisa Friskin, who is another one of Australia's leading mediators and mediation trainers, as is Bianca, and Lisa's going to be speaking tomorrow on the mediation process.